Good evening again, everyone. My name is Melissa Raspberry, and I work for the American Institute for Research, and we have the distinct honor and pleasure of managing and facilitating the CS for All Teachers community. CS for All Teachers is sponsoring tonight's webinar that features two stellar experts in computer science education who are here to share a little bit more with you about College Board's AP-CSA course and some of the new updates that are a part of that course offering. I do want to provide a couple of tech tips before we get started. We are recording this session for those who are unable to attend live, and just wanted to make you aware of that. We'll be posting the recording as well as the PowerPoint on our website and on our events page in the next couple of days. As you participate tonight, we hope that you will be actively engaged in both the chat box as well as orally. I have allowed you to use your microphone to be connected and or your phone itself, and it looks like many of you have taken advantage of that. I do request, though, that you mute yourself, mute your microphone. If you're using the app itself, you should see a little mic option or a little icon at the top of your toolbar in that dark gray or black area where you can hit the drop-down button and say to mute it. And it just helps to cut down on the background noise. But there will be opportunities for you to ask questions, and again, you can do so either in the chat box or ask them orally. So to get us started, I'm going to introduce Becky, and then I'll let Becky introduce Tim to you all. Becky I'm just so super impressed by her bio. She started off and received a bachelor's in computer science and math, taught for a few years, then went back to school and got her master's in computer engineering. And then since 2017, she has been serving as an instructional designer with the College Board, but also has experience being a reader, a table leader, and a question leader at the AP-CSA reading. And just this past June became the director for the AP-CSA curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So if there's anybody who knows anything about this course and what's happening, it's Becky. So thank you, Becky. We so appreciate you being here. And as I mentioned, I'll give you the opportunity to introduce Tim. And just one final note is I'll be here in the background, and if you have any technical issues, I'll be on the lookout for those in the audience chat. But hopefully we will be good to go. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn things over to you, Becky.
All right, thank you, Melissa. That was a very nice introduction. Hopefully I can introduce Tim as nicely. So Tim is on our CSA Development Committee. He has been for several years and is also an AP CSA teacher. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the next slide. So Tim, I actually met at the reading, my first reading a very long time ago, and teaches at Winter Springs High School outside of Orlando, Florida. Tim, do you want to say a little bit more about yourself?
I've been teaching AP-CSA for about 20 years, and as Becky mentioned, I've been a reader almost as long as I've been teaching. I think it started after my second year teaching. So all aspects of the reading from a reader to question leader, table leader, exam leader for a few years as well. And I've been on the development committee, as Becky mentioned, and happy to be here tonight.
Thanks, Tim. So I know some of you are introducing yourselves in the chat, but we're going to go to a little poll just to get a quick sort of look at all of you in the audience and your experience with CSA or just CS in general. So go ahead and select the one that best applies. And for those of you that select other, if you want to sort of in the audience chat, let us know what that is or what your experience is. I'm curious to know. It sounds pretty exciting. Lots of you have more than one CS course, and CSA is one of many, so that's awesome. Yeah. And some of you that are just interested in learning more, which is great. Hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions and have you learn lots about the course tonight. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about. So go over the CSA framework and what we call the course and exam description, or the binder, if you've heard people talking about that, online, on Facebook, wherever. Talk a little bit about unit guides that are in the framework. And then we're going to dive into the formative assessment and some of what's available now based on AP Classroom. And then the question bank, which is exactly what it sounds like, but we'll talk a little bit about how to use it and what's there. And then the progress dashboard, and then sort of taking action is how you can take what you learn from the formative assessments, from the question bank, and hopefully, modify your instruction and the resources that College Board is providing to hopefully help teachers and students be better prepared for the AP exam. So just to let you know, at the end of each of these sections, I'll stop for questions. So if you have a question, you can feel free to interrupt us or type it into the chat, but also know that I'll pause after each section so that you can ask a question, so we don't have to wait till we get to the very end and then have to try and remember what we were talking about. So feel free to interrupt. I was a teacher for a long time. I don't mind. So we're just going to dive in. So the CSA framework. Again, if you don't have a binder, it looks like what is in the bottom left. It's this teal 3-ring binder with the Lego-ish blocks on it. It's not too late to order one if you haven't. College Board is shipping them to all approved teachers that are in the audit, in the course audit, for free. It also comes with a lovely poster and is just a really great resource. And so you can go to collegeboard.org/CED to order it. Again, you just sort of fill out a quick form and they will mail it to you for free. But also just to let you know that it's the same document as what you can get online right now as a PDF. So the only difference between the binder and the online PDF is that the PDF is digital and you can access it right now. You don't have to be in the audit to look at it, to download it, to access it. And so, again, if you're in the audit and you want a physical binder, I know lots of times teachers want them and they are really nice. I am very excited to have mine. You can go ahead and order it.
Definitely get one.
And I believe you have at least another month, but I would say, sometime this fall, if you are in the audit and can, I would suggest ordering one. Some subjects, and I honestly can't tell you right now if CSA is one of them, that was out of stock and had to be reprinted, but they are reprinting them, and everybody who orders one will get one. It might take a month or two, but you will eventually get one. But like I said, what is online is the same thing. And so if you just go to AP Central, this is a snapshot of AP Central, and you click on the home page or the course page, there's a link to the AP Computer Science A course and exam description. You'll also hear me refer to it as the CED. We love our acronyms, so hopefully that's not confusing, but that's sort of the main document, and it took the place of what was sort of the Acorn book. It was black and white, really small. People refer to the AP subset of Java. This really takes the place and is everything that you need to know. And anything else I should mention about the binder, Tim? Like I said, the binder comes with a poster, which is also nice.
I was just about to mention, you got to have the poster, especially when it's up in your classroom, and it just gives you an overview of not only everything you have to cover, you want to make sure you're covering, but it's good pacing guides and everything that's in there that we'll be talking about this evening.
Great. So if you haven't looked at it yet, which is totally fine, we have broken up all of the content of the course and everything. So everything students need to know, hopefully everything that teachers are teaching, into 4 big ideas that are spiraled throughout the course. And these are the 4 big ideas. So modularity, variables, control, and then the impact of computing. Just a note about modularity, variables, and control. These are sort of 3 sub-ideas of just algorithms in general. And so we've really tried to break it down to give students multiple opportunities to see and interact with these big ideas and develop what we call enduring understandings around them. And then impact of computing is something that has always been in CSA and is something that we think is important, but it is not something that is assessed, and it will continue to not be assessed. But it is, again, shown within the framework and where and how you can teach it. And we hope that all the teachers still are teaching, impacts of computing. If you've taught CS principles, you know that it's a really important part of computer science education, and we still feel that way even if we're not assessing it on the exam. So the way that the course content looks now is this is sort of a snapshot of what we would call a topic page. And so it's all laid out by topic, and it's broken down. So again, this enduring understanding falls under a big idea. So in this case, this is a control enduring understanding. The way variables and operators are sequenced and combined in an expression determines the computed result. So again, this is an understanding that we want students to have 5, 10, even 15 years after they take APCSA. Regardless of whether they go on to take another computer science class or not, we want them to understand that the sequence and the way that variables and operators are combined determine how that result is computed. The learning objective, so what you see on the sort of lower left-hand side of that blue box, is what students need to be able to do. So they need to be able to evaluate Boolean expressions that use relational operators in program code. That's one example of them. There are lots in the framework. And then the essential knowledge is what students need to know in order to be able to do that. Just so that everyone knows, this is sort of the new essential knowledge. It all builds on what comes previously. So any essential knowledge that leads up to this point is sort of assumed knowledge at that point, and then we're introducing new knowledge and new information that they need to know in order to complete that specific learning objective. Every question, every free response point will be tied to at least one learning objective. Another new thing that we have done, which is not new, again, for those of you that are familiar with CS principles, is that we've broken down how we want students to be able to think about things into 5 computational thinking practices. So again, if you haven't looked at the course and exam description for CSA, this might be new to you, and that's okay. These are how we're looking at, again, how we want students to interact and do those learning objectives. So program design and algorithm development, code logic, code implementation, code testing, and documentation. Just so that everyone knows, the multiple choice questions will be tied to one of practice 1, 2, 4, or 5. And practice 3, code implementation, is all on the free response question, right? So that's where we're actually asking students to write and implement program code. So I think it's time for our next poll, just so that we can figure out how much we should deep dive into the practices. So if you can go ahead and let us know sort of how comfortable you are with them, if you've seen them, are great with them, have, wherever you fall. It's also fine to say, what practices?
And while we're taking the poll, if I can go back just briefly, as Becky was talking about the essential knowledge and at the beginning of each of the unit, and talking about the enduring understanding. Those are really great, especially for those of us that have to generate lots of documented lesson plans and all of those. Now that having the College Board provide a lot of those things for us to copy and paste into any type of lesson plans that a school or county may need. Those are all right there for us now, spelled out. And she did mention that, but we also wanted to emphasize how it really replaces the Java subset that we had before. And because now all of these in each individual unit, you get not just the subset of the syntax that's being taught, but exactly what students should understand about each aspect of computer science as you go throughout the course as well.
All right, so a few of you have a strong understanding, so that's great. Some of you said you still have 1 or 2 questions. So if you do have questions about them, feel free to type those in the chat, and we will look and try and address those. Again, some of you know they exist but aren't really sure how they relate. Yes, so the link to order a CED, Tim, do you want to add that in, or I can add it in?
Sure.
In the chat. Just collegeboard.org/CED. As far as I'm aware. So for those of you that have the CED or have downloaded the PDF, this is a page that is in it that breaks down the computational thinking practices. It might be a little hard to read on this slide, but essentially under each of the practices, we've broken down the practice even further by what we're calling skill. And so under the first one, like program design and algorithm development, 1A is actually not assessed. It's the only skill on that whole table that's not, but it's determine an appropriate program design to solve a problem or accomplish a task. And this is something that obviously we want students to be able to do. We want them to be able to look at a specification and be able to decide, okay, what class do I need? What variables do I need? What methods should I use? And so that's really what that skill is getting at. The reason that it's not assessed is because when they do this on the AP exam in May, we don't make a value judgment on how good their design actually is and if it's appropriate, right? If it works, they get points. And so what we're hoping is that this is something that teachers can assess in a classroom setting at a much better level than we can at scale. So it's still something important. We want students to be able to do this. They really need to be able to do this, but it won't be assessed on the exam. 1B, determine code that would be used to compile code to complete code segments. So this is, again, those missing code statements, right? So they have, here's a whole block of code, here's a for loop, and we've taken out a piece, and they have to figure out what should go in there to make sure that the results happen. The difference between that and code that would be used to interact with completed program code is that when it's completed, that means they're calling a method or there's an inheritance hierarchy, and they have to know which object creations are valid or would compile and not cause a problem, or what method calls are correct based on existing code. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but if you're not sure about what they look like, again, in the back of the CED, we have sample exam questions, and at the end, there's 15 of them. And at the end of that section, there's the answer key along with the skill and the learning objective. So again, back to what we're expecting students to be able to do that is aligned to each of those questions. And this doesn't mean that that's the only learning objective or the only thing that they're really needing to do in that question, but that's the primary thing that is being assessed. And so if you want to look at what a 4A question looks like, you can pull up that sample question and pull up those sample questions and look at question 4 to see an example of that skill. And that's the type of question, the phrasing, or when we call it the question stem, that's similar to what students would see for that skill on the actual exam. Another thing that you can do, yeah.
Sorry, I think that for me personally, this is the part of the CED that I find the most important, this page and also the page listed on skills, because when, we all make our own tests, and we pull from different sources when we're doing our own internal assessments as we're preparing throughout the course of the year, and it's really, really important that all the different skills get tested. And I went back and looked at some of the questions that I would make up for my own test and realized, wow, I was really only focusing on skill 1 or skill 2 and really not focusing on skill 5 enough. And then having all these questions tagged to particular skills, like we're seeing right here on the slide, really kind of opens you, oh, these are the types of questions I should ask because these are the type of questions that they're going to see on the AP exam. And also just really kind of gives them if they can answer all of these different types of questions with all these different skills, gives them a much better understanding of the content as well. So really making sure that we assess all of the skills simultaneously as we test throughout the course of the year, I find really important. And I've had to go back to a lot of my, just like I said, my own assessments as well, just make sure that I'm giving balanced questions, and now having that resource to be able to do that is helping tremendously for that.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And so there was a question, will the practice questions available on College Board show the question links to the skills? So it does. Like I said, if you look at it, you'll be able to see. And actually that reminded me, I wanted to point out real quick. So practice 5, which we call documentation, if you just look at the title of that, you think, oh, students need to be able to comment their code, which, yes, they do, and that is great, and we want them to. But really, if you look at the skills underneath that, it's basically the skills that they would have to do in order to be able to write good comments. So describe the behavior of a given segment of program code, right? If they're given a piece of code that they didn't write, they need to be able to look at that and understand in general what it does, which is very different from practice 2, which is, code logic, given a piece of code and some sample input, like what is output, right? So it's basically like tracing code, right? So being able to trace code with specific input is one sort of practice, but being able to look and describe and explain what's happening with program code more generally is really what we're getting at with documentation. So, 5A is really, if you were to write post conditions for a method, right, you need to be able to describe them. If you're looking at, describe the initial conditions that must be met for program segment to work as intended, right, that's, again, like if you're given a program segment without preconditions and you're asking them to sort of identify what the preconditions would be. So there's a relationship to comments in code, but we're not testing them on if they can write comments. So I just wanted to make sure that we cleared that up. The other great thing, if you're still sort of not sure about the skills, is that the question bank, which we're going to talk about sort of a little bit later, can be filtered by skill. So if you're, looking for some examples of skill 5B, right, you can actually go through and filter by that practice and that skill, and it will show you all of those questions across the entire course, whatever's in the question bank that is tied to that skill. So it's a really good way to just sort of see what those question types are, and also, as Tim said, to help make sure your students are getting practice with each of those different question types. Those aren't new. Like, we didn't say, oh, these are the practices that we think they should be able to do. We actually looked at the questions that we've asked on, several years worth of exams and said, how can we sort of group these and categorize them so that teachers understand the types of questions that students are being asked. And as Tim said, when I have sort of talked about skills and practices, a lot of teachers are like, I'm good with 1 and 2, right? Those are your go-tos, your bread and butter. But 4 and 5 practice, the skills that are in practice 4 and the skills that are in practice 5 are a little, like, they're not usually the first things that jump to your mind when you're going to create a quiz or, a bell ringer. So I would say, use the question bank, filter as much as you can, and then we also have a bunch of formative questions that we're going to talk about that will also help. So just for those of you that are familiar with CSA or wanting to learn more, want to make sure we're clear on what is the same and what has changed. So format, weighting, timing, all the same. Number of questions, number of free response questions, the options for each multiple choice question, all of that is the same. And again, what I just said about the distribution of questions from units as well as practices, we didn't think of, oh, this is how many we want to ask from, on writing classes, which is our Unit 5. We actually looked at what we had done in the past and said, oh, we typically have, this many from Unit 5, and so we give you a range in the CED of how many multiple choice questions come from each practice as well as each unit. So the what has changed, we've now articulated that for you. So there's nothing that you as a teacher need to do. It's just, that's why the CED, the course and exam description, and the framework is so large and so long, because we've broken down everything that used to be in the AP Java subset and really spelled it out by learning objective, by essential knowledge, and by practice and skill, so that hopefully it's very transparent to all of the teachers and students of what they need to know and what they're going to be assessed on. The second piece of what has changed, and again, for those of you that have had several years of teaching CSA, you're going to say, well, of course, that doesn't make, I knew this, but being consistent on the type of free response questions that we ask every year. So methods and control structures, that's going to be a question that focuses on selection, iteration, and just sequence of items, and method calls, right? Creating objects and calling methods. There's not going to be arrays, there's not 2D arrays, there's not array lists, they're not asked to design a class. There are going to be classes in that question, but what students are going to be asked to do is more of like an entry into the free response questions, right? So basically, students are prepared to answer a full methods and control structures question after Unit 4. They will know everything that they need to do to answer that question. Now, does that mean they're going to all get 5s on the exam? No, but they will have covered all of that content in the first 4 units. Okay? Our class design question is when we give them a specification and ask them to design the class, right? What are the variables that I need? What are the methods that I need? And again, we're not going to assess them on the design of how good it is. It's just, does it work? Does it do what we need it to do in order to get those points? We're going to have a question that focuses on arrays or array lists. It could have both, but that's going to be its main focus. And then we're going to have a 2D array question.
The methods and
so
control structures and arrays, and they also have 2D arrays. So class, you have the control structures, classes, array list, and 2D arrays.
Yeah, so those are the 4 free response questions that we have we're going to have every year going forward. So again, those of you that have taught for 5 and 6 years, you probably are like, well, yeah, we know this. And so we just didn't want it to be something that you had to teach for 2 or 3 or 4 years in order to see that pattern. We wanted to be very upfront with teachers, even if it's their first year teaching, that they know what students are going to be asked on that exam and in the free response questions. And then also, in case anybody has not heard, interfaces, abstract classes, and base number conversions are no longer part of the CSA course. So just to make sure everybody knows, auto boxing has been added, but just so that everyone knows, that doesn't mean that there's extra that you as the teacher have to do. It basically means that the development committee and ETS's job, when they create those canonical solutions for the free response questions, are going to be much more in line with what the students actually write, because they were already using auto boxing. And so there's not going to be this, int value, lots of those extra calls when you're getting items out of an array list, or when you're putting items into an array list. So hopefully, like I said, that's not a big change. Hopefully it's just, again, more transparent and more clear for even brand new teachers.
And one thing, only because I've heard it come up before, of course, someone asked me, well, if all the method and control structures on question 1, does that mean there's not going to be, well, of course there could be control structures in questions 2, 3, and 4. In the 2D array question, there may be an array list or an array data structure that deals with it, that is part of the 2D array question. So that's possible as well. However, as Becky mentioned, there won't be data structures in the method and controls question, and the class design question focuses on development of methods and things like that. But you might see, as she mentioned, arrays and array lists in the question, in the array and array list question, either or. And you still might see arrays and or array lists in the 2D array question possibly as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. That's right. So the way I look at it is units 1 through 4 and even 1 through 5 really are foundational, right? You have to be able to know and understand the content in those units to be able to do anything else. Right? If you don't understand selection, you're not going to be able to do much with arrays or array lists, right? Or if you don't understand iteration, right, you're not going to be able to loop through and traverse an array or an array list or a 2D array. So, you know, they're really sort of the foundational unit, and you know, it's okay to spend a lot of time on those if you need to. Your students will probably thank you. There's a question. Oh, I guess Tim got it. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about formative assessments a lot. I'm going to go on to, I guess, let me pause for any other questions about the framework. I did say I would pause at these times to see if there are any questions. Okay, so I'm going to go on. So within the framework, within the course and exam description, we have what are called unit openers. So we have 10 units, and so there are 10 pages like what is on in the center of the screen right now. And across the top you'll see, so that's that percentage of multiple choice questions that would be tied to that unit. Again, just so that everybody's clear, like Unit 1 looks like there's very few questions, but again, that's foundational, so if they don't understand that, they're probably going to have a hard time answering any question that follows. So this is really like what is from the learning objectives specifically within that unit, not saying that they wouldn't need to know stuff that came before it. We've also given you a suggestion of class periods. Again, everything that's in here is suggested. You can use it, not use it. We're hoping that it's helpful, but if you are doing something and it works, you can, you know, feel free to look at this or not. It's totally up to you. We were really trying to focus on new teachers. So the sections that are on this page, developing understanding, I'm not going to read this all to you, but we've really broken down sort of everything that is going on in that unit and given you like a one-page summary of it. So hopefully there's a lot packed into this page. Hopefully you find it useful. We've provided essential questions. We've talked about, you know, how the computational thinking practices are addressed within the unit, what students are going to see on the exam that comes from that unit, and how this unit actually prepares them for that. And then we've given you this unit at a glance. So the unit at a glance ties every topic with at least one, usually more than one, suggested skill. And that's going to come into play when we talk about the formative assessment items. So lots of stuff there. And then we have the suggested activities. So each unit has a selection of, again, suggested activities in case you're not sure where to start or you want to try and spice things up or change things up. We've brought together activities that specifically tie the content and that suggested skill of a topic. And so how can you sort of help students practice and get better at that skill along with that content? So, you know, teachers, they're all optional. Feel free to modify as you want or need. And then lastly, on the right is what we call a topic page. And so again, this is where that box that we talked about with the enduring understanding, the learning objective, and the essential knowledge. And then you'll also notice that in the margin there's a suggested skill that is spelled out and given there. And then we've also tried to highlight available resources. So again, for teachers that might be new or might just be looking for additional resources, we have tried to highlight ones that they're all free and that are available and tied to the content of that topic. Obviously on the print version, they're just listed there, but on the PDF, they are actually links that will take you directly to those resources. So things like the, Practice It or Coding Bat, the Runestone CSA review book, those are all linked within the topic pages. Tim, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so one thing I've mentioned to a few people, it's important to note that, so the CED is definitely not a textbook. It's a way of spelling out, here's everything that should be covered, but then it's important then to go out and say, okay, now what resources can you use, whether it's a textbook or an online resource or a canned curriculum or whatever. The CED is great for making sure here's all the skills, here's all the topics that have to be covered, but now here are some sample and suggested activities and resources to go out, but very important to go and use those resources, whether the ones listed here or any other, to make sure that, that obviously as you're putting your class and curriculum together, the CED is a guide to what you should cover, and then there's all the other resources of how we should cover that and how we're going to engage our students to cover all those skills.
Yeah, that's a great point. So are there any questions about the unit guides or about other, I guess, content from the course and exam description? Okay. If there are, feel free to type in the chat. I'm going to move on to formative assessment, which, as a former instructional designer and former teacher, this is what I am most excited about and what I think that teachers are going to be most excited about. So previously, College Board, we provided practice questions and practice exams, if you had access to the course audit, and then obviously the AP exam. And we would give teachers these instructional planning reports after the exam was over in May. You'd get them over the summer, and you'd be able to see what your students didn't know in May, now that you're getting prepared for a whole new batch of students. And so that was great for teachers that taught, year over year and could see trends and make adjustments. But we wanted to give teachers a way of recognizing misunderstandings that students might have and correcting it during the school year, right? So we're going to focus on the topic questions, and then we'll talk about the personal progress checks. But as you can see from the spectrum, these are more informal and they're formative assessment. So I know if you've been on Facebook or on the online teacher community, there's talk of like how you can use these and not give grades and what's the point. And so again, formative assessment, there's lots of different types of assessment. But formative in our mind is meant to be low stakes, really getting an idea of where a student is and what they know and don't know, and hopefully fairly informally, right? We don't, as soon as you attach sort of higher stakes, then there's this idea that students need to get it right, or maybe this isn't where they belong, and we want to try and eliminate that as much as possible. And so when we're talking about the topic questions and the personal progress checks, the grades that we would like you to give are completion grades or improvement grades. It's not that you can't give a grade, it's just that when a student gets, say, a 6 out of 10 on a quiz, right, that sends a message, and we don't necessarily want to be sending that message, especially early on. And so that's why it's meant to be, low stakes completion, maybe, or like I said, improvement. But first I want to talk about topic questions. So this is actually a screenshot from the CSA AP Classroom portal. So Unit 1, right, it shows the unit topics, and if you click on those, it will take you to the topic pages. They're links. It shows you the associated skills. And then on the right-hand side, there's a list of topic questions. And so if you click on one of these, it will take you to the question bank, and it will automatically filter by formative questions that all come with rationales, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, that are tied to that topic. So here's an example of a topic question from Unit 1, Topic 1.1, right? So what is printed as a result of executing the code statement? Now, this is basically day one of a class, or if you do sort of your own introduction, introductory activity, this might be a day 2 or day 3. Sometimes there's administrative stuff that has to happen on day 1, but students don't really know much yet, right? And so if we look at topic 1.1, right, it's why programming, why Java, and the learning objective is call system class methods to generate output to the console. Now, chances are, maybe you have them start with hello world or something else, but, chances are you're showing them sort of the power of programming right away. And so they can't do much, but they can do some. And so this is a topic question. And again, this just to see how this relates to the skill, right? The STEM, what is printed as a result, right? So there's a very specific code where they're asking, we're asking for a result or output, and so that's a 2B, right? And the without method calls other than output is that system.out.print statements are a little bit different than calling methods, and so we've sort of separated that out, and so that's why. So all of these, I guess I don't have a screenshot for that, I apologize. All of these answer choices have rationales. So when a student answers this topic question, when you as the teacher are ready to release the answers, students can see what they chose, and they can see the rationale, either why it was incorrect or correct for what they chose. And then they can also click through all of the other choices. So if they selected something that was correct, that's great, they'll see it, but maybe when they took it, they were kind of guessing, right? And so they're like, oh, I wasn't really sure if it was B or C. They can click on B and see and read why that was not the right choice, right? And why C was the right choice. And our rationales have been, I think very thoughtful, but certainly if you find anything that's not clear, feel free to let me know. So these are some ways that you can use topic questions. Again, these are all options, and these are just ideas for you. Again, topic questions are individual, and so they can be assigned individually or together. Each topic skill pairing has 3 questions, so you can actually do more than one of these. So you can have, ask them at 1 question as an exit ticket. You could have them doing 1 as homework that night. And then the very next day, if you want 1 as a bell ringer to see how much they've retained, you can use 1 there too. Okay. And this idea that data review should occur immediately is that, we really want, again, this is formative, it's informal, we want students to take it and then sort of start looking at that feedback almost immediately. So there was a question about where the topic questions are in the portal, so I'm going to go back just a second. So again, this is sort of your landing, this is the home page. You have to scroll down a little bit to see the different units, but if you scroll down past the assign a personal progress check or the results that you're seeing, you'll see all of the units, and it's on the right-hand side, and it'll take you to the question bank, and that's where the topic questions are. And again, you can choose to use those however you want. This is, so you can, again, this is same page, just scrolling further down, you'll see topic questions along the right. And then at the bottom of that page, there are links to personal progress checks. So you can see, what you have available to assign and, whether or not you've unlocked it. Okay. So I think this is another poll that we have, which is about the personal progress checks. And we're going to talk more about them afterwards. It's just a matter of how much sort of detail I should go into. So All right, so in the interest of time, I think we're going to close it there. I'm super excited to hear that 3 of you have assigned multiple PPCs. Would love to hear how that's going or if you have any feedback. For those of you that haven't assigned one but would like to, hopefully after tonight you'll feel much more comfortable with how to and what that might look like. So can we go back to the slideshow? Thank you. All right, so this is the course at a glance, which is also in the course and exam description. And this is actually what the poster is of. So again, there's 10 units, and the poster shows all 10 of them, but I couldn't really fit them all and have them be visible. So on the bottom of this, it just sort of highlighted, made it a little bigger. It shows you what the progress checks are and what they have. And so to make it a little more easier to read, so for Unit 3, the progress check, there's a multiple choice that has about 20 questions, and then a free response, which is a separate one that has 2 questions. And you'll notice there's a methods and control structures, so that's a full 9-point free response question, and then there's the methods and control structures partial. And so partial questions are up to 6 points, and it's, again, it's modeled after a full free response question, but it's not a full free response question, mostly due to timing and what students have time to answer in a class period. So again, the course at a glance tells you what all of those are. Just so that you know, Units 1, 2, and 5, the multiple choice questions have actually 2 parts because they would take more than 40 minutes. But when you're looking at the class periods at the top of the unit where it says sort of 8 to 10, 13 to 15 class periods, all of that, the time to give a personal progress check in class is built into that time. Now, you don't have to give them in class. You can give them as homework. You can give them in class, but we did build in time for that. You can also click on the progress check tab that's right next to the home tab, and it will give you the list of all of the progress checks that are available for the entire course. And you can preview them or assign them at any time. Just like with the topic questions, the multiple choice questions all have rationales for every option. So the correct option as well as every incorrect option, it explains why it's incorrect. Free response questions have scoring guidelines, so those of you that have looked at AP Central in the past and seen the scoring guidelines and the rubrics that we have for the released exam questions, the free response PPCs all have similar scoring guides. So again, designed to fit within a 45-minute class period, but they can be assigned outside of class as well. Yes, you can reassign progress checks. So basically, once it's closed, you can click reassign. I've also heard from some teachers where if you have a student that was absent, you don't actually have to reassign. You can just unlock it, and any student that has already submitted won't be able to resubmit, so you'll be able to hit those few that maybe were absent. You could just unlock it, and only the students that hadn't submitted anything will be able to submit. But yes, you can completely reassign if you would like to. And I believe that on the progress dashboard, it averages them. So just something to keep in mind.
There was a question about interpreting the results. And I know it's early in the year, so obviously we probably haven't assigned lots of them. I've done the Unit 1 so far in my class. And just to get a good snapshot, it's not only necessarily good just from our standpoint to kind of see where everyone is. Obviously, they're color-coded with the dark green, light green, which means they're probably in a pretty good area from that point, whereas a lot more yellow indicating that there's definitely some weaknesses as far as understanding the skills. But it's a really great, just kind of a sanity check for the students who may think, oh, I've got this, no problem. Suddenly they're realizing, oof, my color's coming back and it's yellow. They don't quite know it as well as they do. So I find it not only just good for me to see where they are, but also for them individually to see where they are as well as we're getting towards the end of a unit. I think the dark green and light green are about like in the 50% or above range. When you look at how AP, questions are scored, these are only formative questions, but, if they're not necessarily getting 100%, but they're getting a large majority of them, I think they're in a good spot at that point at the end of a particular unit.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the progress dashboard in just a minute. This is not the way that the scoring guidelines look for the free response questions, but it's a little prettier in the system, but I didn't have a screenshot of it. But you'll see like the canonical solution, each of the rubric points, what skill it's tied to, and then sort of you'll have a chance to click the check boxes to show students which points they got or didn't, or you can leave those boxes unchecked and they can sort of look at their own question and decide for themselves which ones they got. So again, some examples of how you can use the PPCs. We would encourage them at the end of a unit, and they can be done in class or as homework. And then again, the idea is these are formative, so this shouldn't really take the place of your chapter test or a unit test, but it's a good way to make sure that students are prepared for such a test or a quiz. So again, meant to still be formative. I'm going to go on just in the interest of time. I think we've done a pretty good job of answering questions as they come up, but if you have more, let me know. The AP question bank. So again, you can see all of these different ways that you can filter. We've already talked about being able to filter by skill, but you can also filter by units and by topics. You can filter by assessment purpose, so that's formative versus summative. So if you only want to be able to look at formative items, you can. Or if you want to look at summative items, you can. You can filter by big ideas and learning objectives. So there's lots of different things that you can filter. You can obviously preview all of the questions and then add them to your own assessment. There's a question, yes, you do need to have audit. You need to be through the audit, but for those of you that maybe haven't done it this year for whatever reason, that's fine. There is no syllabus submission right now for it, so all you need is that your administrators to say yes, you're teaching it. If you have created a quiz, at least one, any questions that were on it will have this orange bar on the side so that you can see what you've already assigned. And if you happen to have put it in more than one assessment, whether it's a quiz or a test, you can click on it and it will show you all of the assessments that item is, that question is in. So again, you can preview them, add them, and it will also tell you what you've used previously. I know sometimes teachers want to avoid questions they've already asked, and sometimes teachers want to ask the same question again to see if students maybe did better the second time around. This is the results for the question bank. So for every assessment that you create, you can see, again, Tim's talking about this sort of dark yellow, light green, and then dark green. And we're going to talk about what that means right now with the progress dashboard. Any quick questions about the question bank? Again, there's a lot there. I know CSA doesn't have a ton of questions in there, but we do have a good number. And I think that, College Board seems pretty committed to adding to it. So hopefully, I know for sure there's going to be a new practice exam coming, but I think over time we'll be adding to that. All right, so progress dashboard and how to interpret the results. So this is, I think, U.S. government politics, so ignore the topics and skills, but for us they would show up with our topic name and our skills. And so this is sort of the class view, so you can sort of see where every student falls and then the average for the topic and skill pairing. So again, each topic skill pairing should have 3 questions, and so you can sort of see this is an average of how students do. You can also then filter if you wanted to instead, you can sort of see the topic versus skill. You can filter by skill, and so you can sort of see if maybe it's not the content, it's not the topic, but maybe every time skill 5C comes up, students are having a hard time, right? And their average is much lower. So question by skill filter. I am not sure that you can do that from question bank items yet. I think that's something they're still working on. So if somebody else knows, Tim, do you know if you can filter quiz results by skill?
I haven't tried that yet, so.
Okay. The other thing, so if you choose to click on the bar, you can actually see where every student falls. And so again, Tim had mentioned that 0 to 25% is sort of that darker yellow. 25 to 50 is the lighter yellow. 50 to 75 is light green, and 75 to 100 is dark green. So, you know, depending on where students fall, you can sort of see who might need some additional assistance, who might need some instructional support, versus who is pretty solid and you know, you can feel comfortable. I want to make sure to say that this is not in any way predictive of actual AP exam scores. It's meant, you know, it's progress, right? They're on their way. So, you know, and think of it like this: a student getting 75 to 100 on Unit 2, which is, you know, creating objects and calling methods, you know, that means that they're on track, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get a 5 on the exam. So it's really just a way to see the progress and how they're doing with that formative assessment in the moment where they are in your class. So I know there was one question obviously about the dashboard about with question bank items and filtering those. Like I said, I don't think you can yet, but I think they're working on that. But are there any other questions on the progress dashboard? On practice exams, is there a range for where students should aim for certain scores? Tim, do you want to take that one? How you handle that?
I mean, in general, the scoring is they don't publish the exact, you know, what percentage is a 3 or 4 or 5. In general, though, kind of, I like to, in my classroom, if they're getting 50% or better, and that's with a full, like an actual practice exam, a full summative assessment, free response questions, multiple choice that are in the style of the AP exam. 50% or better usually puts them into the passing range, with obviously 4s and 5s being a higher percentage from there. And that varies from exam to exam, but if you want to get kind of just a ballpark figure of where they are, obviously, you know, they're not needing to get a 70 or 80% just to get a passing score on the exam. But obviously the grade sets are, you know, they vary slightly from year to year, but I think in general we've looked at, you know, 50%-ish around that for around where that 3 tends to be, and then a little bit higher for your 4s and 5s.
Okay, so real quick, what do you do if you notice that some of your students are struggling? So one of the things we've done is provided instructional strategies at the end of the course and exam description. So lots of different, again, example activities, things that you can do. And then there's also a developing the computational thinking practices. So again, if you see a specific skill that your class seems to be struggling with, or maybe a subsection of your students seem to be struggling with, we've provided some sample activities that might be able to address that. Again, just sort of a reminder, those sample instructional activities at the start of each unit also provide additional options. So, you know, maybe you have an activity that you love and you do that, and then if you, you know, depending on how your class is doing, if you need some additional activities or instruction for, again, a particular set of students or an entire class, you can look at those instructional activities and see. And then we also have 4 new labs that are out and available, again, behind the course audit. The student manuals are available on AP Central publicly right now. Hopefully, we'll maybe be doing another one of these, or, you know, something else to get you some more information about the labs, because there's a lot there. And then I think just real quick, I know there's a survey in the audience chat, but we have one last poll for you all. And that's more of just what other resources would you like to see from us? So if there's something that you want from us that is not in this option and you have like another, again, feel free to put it in the chat. Very interested to hear how we can better support, you know, all AP CSA teachers.
I know we're near the end, and Becky mentioned the labs. If you haven't had a chance to check out the new labs, they don't replace the old ones. The old ones are still available, the Magpie and 11s, but these new labs have some really, really good content to them. I highly suggest taking a deep dive into them when you have a chance. There's some great, great content in there.
I didn't pay him to say that, I promise.
I like them a lot better than the old labs. I'll just say that. So there's the steganography lab's great, and some of the other things. So.
All right. So more labs, some activities with lessons, and formative questions. More formative questions. All right. Great. And with that, I think we are at time. If there are any final questions, I still have a minute or so. I'm happy to stay and answer them. The help button. So the help button in AP Classroom, there are some tutorials, there are some videos, and there is a teacher sort of help guide within AP Classroom that talks about a lot of that stuff and how to do things. Yes, there's a question about the Java quick reference. Go for it. I'm reading.
Yes, this is being recorded, Katie, for playback at a later time.
Absolutely, and this is Melissa here. I will go ahead and chime in to say that we do hope that you will complete the short feedback survey that's linked there in the chat window. As Tim said, we are recording this, and we'll be sharing the recording as well as a PDF of the presentation on the CS for All Teachers site. That also gets tweeted out when it is available. And I'm going to put the link into the chat window as well. If you want to bookmark that, that's where we'll go back and add the recording and the PDF so you can visit later. But I'd just like to say thank you so much to Becky and Tim for this tonight. Even while the webinar was going on, I got an email from someone saying that they had some of their teacher leaders that were participating, and they were finding things super helpful. So thank you all. Maybe we can bring you back again and certainly continue to share this information. We hope those of you who aren't a member will join CS for All Teachers and come back for more great webinars soon. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a great night.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, and thank you, Melissa, for having us. Hopefully it was helpful.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Go ahead, Tony. I'm here if you'd like to grab the mic and ask, or you can put it in the chat window. I'm happy to answer.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Is there any chance that we can get a chapter of the Computer Science Teachers Association? We had this a couple of years ago. It was Dr. Albright and Jennifer. It was Jennifer Albright and Dr. Two folks at NC State, and it was really very helpful.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we had a
I'm going to put my email address in the
I'll put it in the chat window. If you want to put me in, I'll talk about it more.
Okay, great. Yeah, it was really, really good. And we got a tour of the labs at NC State.